Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, September 5th, 2021, 10 o'clock a.m. New York time. Hope you're having a great weekend. And I just want to make a video here, guys, on another tool that I'm just kind of experimenting with. And you can see it on the screen here, and I'll go through it. And some of you might know what it is already. And there's many, of course, as usual, there are many different versions of it out there that you can find and download. And as always, what I'll tell you is if you do decide to find one of these and download and try it, make sure that you do not pay for it. Okay, this is a free indicator that you can just Google search, and you'll find probably multiple websites that have some different versions of it. And but if any of them are trying to sell it to you, just move on, because that's just somebody repackaging a free indicator and trying to make money on it. Okay, so this is a free indicator, and so what it's called is basically a market open indicator. And what it does is it marks off, depending on how it works, but they all pretty much do the same thing. They mark off the different sessions of the Forex market. So New York, Tokyo, London, some of them you can add Sydney, which I'm not using, but so basically New York, London, and Tokyo, which are your three major markets. So when I went out and looked for it, I just went into the search and I just typed in Forex Market Open Indicator MT4, and it brought up a whole bunch of different ones. And one of the ones it brought up, which I did not use, this is another very common version, is the one that plots below the price with these bars. So each one of these bars represents the open to the close of whatever session this green bar represents. Okay, and it shows these bars down below, and you can see with the sessions that have overlap, how they run. So that's one version of it. I don't prefer this because as I'll show you when we actually go through how to use it, this is not really very helpful to me. It's not bad, but it doesn't really accomplish what I like. So this is one version where it plots below. And that happens to be on this website, Forex Indicators, forexmt4indicators.com. That just came up in the search results, but I've seen this on other sites. The one I ended up downloading is on this website, fxtradingrevolution.com. And again, it came up in my search results, and this is the one that I used. And it tells you a little bit more about how it works, and then there's a download link for it, and you see it's a free download. And then you just install it into your indicators file the way you do any other custom indicator into MT4, and then you have to make the adjustments. Now that's what I'm going to talk about really quick before I show you how I'm kind of using this. So once you drop it onto your chart, and let me bring up the box here. As usual, make sure you check off allow DLL imports. That allows that the indicators stay updated. And then for colors, I don't even know what this color does. When I change it, nothing changes on my chart. So I don't even know what this color tab is. So if you figure it out, great. So really, the main tab you want to adjust is this inputs. Now this is how it defaults. Tokyo, London, New York are all turned on. Sydney is off. I would leave that. You don't need Sydney. That's Australia. It's a very small market, and it's really, for the Asian market, Tokyo is the only one you really need to see. The other one, there's two other ones here, main ones. The first one is server time offset. So I can't tell you how to set this because this entirely depends on your broker. And what time zone you're in, but mostly on your broker. And what this does is it makes sure the boxes draw in the correct areas. Okay, so for me, the New York session is the end of the New York session on my broker is the end of a trading day. So if I came up with a time on my broker, it would be 000, and that's when it rolls over from New York into the Asian session. So I needed to make sure that these boxes lined up on the so since I know New York is 000, when I plotted this, I needed to make sure that these boxes lined up the edge of the New York session end, which is, for instance, right here. Here's the New York session, this box right here. Okay, so this right hand edge of it should be the end of the New York session, and I can easily just confirm that by just taking my crosshair, which I can't grab right now because I got this open, and lining it up right on this box, on the edge of this box, and then, you know, look down at the bottom here. It'll show you the time. I guess let me just show you. I can reopen that. Gotta close it over here. Okay, so if I grab this right here and I line it up on the edge of that box, okay, you can see down at the bottom there, you can see the time. It says 000. Okay, so I knew that when I plotted it, I needed to see that. Now, if one is right, then the other three will plot correctly. Okay, and I know for sure the London Open is at 3 a.m. on my broker chart, and so well, it's 3 a.m. my time, but it's 10 a.m. on my broker chart, and there it is, right? So now I'm on the left-hand edge of the London Open, and you can see at the bottom it says 10 o'clock. Okay, this is a 15-minute chart, so it's a little sensitive. All right, so when you put it on your chart, you're going to have to go and make sure that it lines up correctly with the time zones, because if it doesn't, it's going to defeat the whole purpose. You're not going to get accurate information. So this server time offset, now it defaults to auto, okay, but I found when I left it on auto, it was incorrect. When I put it on auto, the offsets were not right, so I had to manually go in, and for me it just happened to be +2. It was shifted backwards 2 hours. So it was 2 hours off, so I had to do +2, and then that fixed it. So I'm going to leave it on +2. All right, but I can't tell you what it is for your broker. It all depends what your broker considers the beginning or the end of a particular trading day, and you know, so you're going to have to just go in and figure that out and set it accordingly if the auto doesn't work for you. But make sure that that's correct. Okay. That's really critical. This of all the settings, make sure this one's accurate. Okay, and the only other one that I changed was this color scheme. And again, this has a default to auto as well. When you install it, it'll say auto, but that didn't really work, because on my chart, if I left it on auto, because I have a black background, I could barely see any of these lines. They were so light I couldn't see them. So I changed it to light scheme, and it brightened all these up, and that's fine. Now I can see them just fine. So I would imagine if you use a white background, you probably want to set it to dark, and that probably will darken up the lines, so it makes them easier to see on a white background. But if you're using a dark background or a black background, you have to make it light. And again, you can try it on auto. It didn't work for me. So those are the only two things I noticed. And you can play around with other things like how much past data you want it to see, you want to show. I think it defaults to 3 days. I changed it to 8 just because I was back testing. But I think it defaults to 3. And if future sessions, it defaults ahead 3 sessions, which are these 3 lines right here. And you can change that too. I don't really see any need to change that. But I was increasing the past sessions to show just because I was doing some back testing. But the default setting might be fine unless you want to back test it. You can't put like just an endless number here. I think, you know, you have to keep it relatively, it won't plot so much back data. But you know, you can make it something higher than this, though. I think it has to be a multiple of 8, and you can plot some past data and see you know, how it looks in back testing. All right, so once you have it all set, just obviously save it as a template on your platform, so you don't have to readjust this every time you every time that you put it on one of your charts, okay, because that's a pain. So save it as a template, save the chart as a template, and then you can just apply it really easily, and it'll hold all your settings that you adjusted inside of here. All right, so then once you get it on your chart, it will display these individual session boxes between the 1 minute and the 30 minutes. So if you go, close this. If you go through here, you'll see, well, it's on the 1 minute, but the boxes are so big you can barely see them. But 1 minute, there's the 5, 15, 30. And then once you get to the 1 hour, it only draws out the open of the next session. It doesn't draw the individual prices. And the reason why it doesn't is because obviously once you get to these time frames, the boxes will be so small that it'll be hard to really make any use out of them. So it doesn't plot the individual ones on here. You have to go to the shorter time frame. But it will show you the next session coming up, which of course is Tokyo because the market's closed right now. But when it does reopen, it'll be the Tokyo session. So that's this pink line you're seeing. And it'll show that all the way out to the 4 hour, and then that's it. Beyond the 4 hour, it won't show you anything. Okay? And you can change that setting, but there's really no need for it. So that's a default setting too. But these individual, so these vertical lines, this one here, and when you see it on the short time frame, these three here are just the upcoming sessions that are coming. So this is, I don't know if you can see this. This is TO, that's Tokyo. The green is LN London, and the blue is NY New York, obviously. So those are upcoming sessions. But what we're really focused on are these boxes that are already drawn on price. I don't really care about these so much. Okay? So I'm going to show you now basically how to use this. Now, like anything else, guys, this is only going to really be of any value during a trending market. Okay, so as you look through your charts and you want to try to install this, you're not going to find much use on it in a consolidating sideways market. So if you go to the 1 hour, the 4 hour, the daily, and the market is moving sideways, choppy, and there's no clear trend, don't even bother because you're going to get a lot of false information. But if you see a nice trending market on, say, the 1 hour to the daily, 1 hour, 4 hour, maybe the daily, go ahead and put this on there. And then go down to your 15-minute chart, which I find to be the best chart. The 1 minute's too short. The 5 minutes probably a little too short. But the 15 is pretty good for using this. And so this is the Aussie Yen, which, of course, was trending very nicely on the hourly chart and the 4 hour chart. We had a nice uptrend going. And guys, the only thing I want to remind you, which I know I don't have to, is that eventually these trends end. So even if you're using this methodology, at some point price is going to roll over and start going the other way. But as long as the uptrend's intact, this actually works pretty well. So the way when I was looking at this is, of course, this is an Asian pair, a pure Asian pair, because it's the Australian dollar and the Japanese yen. So what you expect to see is pretty much what I see is, so here, well, starting right here, here's the Tokyo market. So Tokyo opens right here at this left side. You get a couple hours of nothing, okay, and then price shoots up. And then London opens and we see a kind of a consolidation pullback during the London session. And then New York opens and price goes up again. Okay, and then London closes right about here at this red candle, and which is pretty typical. London closes and everything kind of goes back to sleep again. You can see the price just kind of drops, comes up, drops, and just basically consolidates back down again. Then we have the Tokyo session opens again the next day. You can see price just kind of consolidates for a couple hours and then up again. Again, a correction during the London session. New York opens, okay, price shoots up. Again, close of the London session, things go back to sleep. Okay, Tokyo session again, chops around, consolidates lower for a couple hours, shoots up again. London, okay, consolidates. New York opens, price shoots up. London closes, price comes down. Okay, so what I just showed you guys is exactly the same movement every single day for these. Well, I mean, this is only 3 days. 1, 2, 3 days. This is 3 days. So 3 days does not necessarily make a guarantee. But this is a trending market. And this is how these are gonna work. Now again, this is an Asian pair. So naturally you're gonna see Tokyo be a little bit more in play here because it's an Asian market. So you have to kind of go through, and one of the other things I found is I have about 22 pairs that I follow down here. And yesterday I was doing just a really quick analysis, and I actually found a couple of pairs that I'm like, maybe this isn't a pair I should trade because it's more active during, the London session. and not necessarily when I'm watching it. And most of them, though, I should be able to squeeze some advantage out, but some of them are better than others. So depending on what time of day you have to be able to really look at your charts, you might be able to, think about which pairs you really want to follow. If you trade mostly the Asian session, well, the Aussie Yen is probably a good pair to trade when it's trending, because it makes most of its moves during Tokyo. Honestly, it makes more movement during Tokyo than it does during New York. During the New York London overlap, it moves basically about probably 60% of its movement for the day is happening during the Tokyo session. So if you can only trade in the evening during the Asian session, this is probably a pair you want to look at when it's trending, of course. All right. Let me look at the euro dollar. Everybody likes to trade the euro dollar, right? Not a big fan of it, but so now this is a European American pair, right? There's no Asian component to this. So what would you expect? You would expect pretty much no or very little movement during the Tokyo session, and most of the movement during London and New York, and clearly that's what you see here. So we'll look at these 3 days. Here's Tokyo. We're in an uptrend. Price moving down during Tokyo. London opens, bam, shoots up, continues through the New York session, and then once London closes, things go back to sleep. The price continues to move down all the way through the rest of the day and into the Tokyo session. London opens again. Now on this day, wasn't a lot of movement at the start of the London session. New York opens, you had this little liquidity dip right here where they're trying to take out people's stops right here, and then boom, then it shoots up. Okay, and then London goes to sleep, and this actually did continue up a little bit more, but for the most part didn't really make much more progress on the day. And then Tokyo again, not much. London opens, price shoots up, okay, and comes back down again at the start of the New York session, and then comes up again, and then kind of levels off. And so again, you can see most of the movement of this pair is happening during the London and New York session. But I'm not a big fan of the euro dollar. I know it's the most widely traded pair, and if you look, this is why. Because we have this big movement up. London opens and nothing happens. Then New York opens, it shoots up for a half an hour, and then it comes all the way back down. Now this was non-farm payroll, so I guess that's probably a little bit of a caveat, because this was this past Friday. We had NFP, which was can be very volatile, so maybe you throw this day out. But either way, what you see is quiet during Tokyo, and then whatever movement you're going to get is going to happen during London. Okay, but it draws it out really nice, so you can see every day. So if there's an uptrend, you're looking to re-enter it, you can put this on your chart and clearly kind of see what time of day, just very easily glancing at this, what time of day you should think about getting back in. If you wanted to enter this pair, say during a quiet time, let's just take this day. So here's the Tokyo. You could draw a trend line across here and say, when this breaks, which of course it breaks at the London Open, you could get in right here and just ride this out. If you're a day trader, you might get out at the end of the New York session. If you're a swing trader, you might just hold it and just understand that you're going to have these pullbacks during the Tokyo session. Or depending again what time you're looking at your charts, you might just get in during the Tokyo session, let it go on for a few hours so it bottoms out here, because this was the start of the Tokyo session. So it took a few hours for it to get to this point. And then just take a long position here. But give your stop plenty of room. I wouldn't put my stop just below here, because it could drift lower during the night if you've gone to bed and you're not watching it. So I wouldn't just put my stop like right here. I'd probably put it down at this swing low down here, just to give it a little breathing room in case you get a spike, or if it continues to drift down a little bit during the night. And then when London opens, it should go up. And then you can, at that point, you can manage it. So either put a buy stop up here somewhere, or just take the long straight away once Tokyo has kind of established that low on the day, and then and then just go from there, right? So what's another one here? So another one that trades Tokyo session and then into New York, of course, which should not surprise you, is the Euro Kiwi. Okay, we have this strong downtrending market going, and of course, again, this has an Asian component, but it has a European component too. So we looked at a pure Asian component. We looked at a pure American European component pair, and now we looked at a mixed one here. And pretty much what you see here, starting from here, again, Tokyo starts off very quiet, a lot of consolidation, and then it trends down. And then London opens, okay, and you get this push back up, and then at the New York Open, it trends back down again. And then and this tends to continue right through the New York close. All right, and then New York closes, Tokyo opens, it consolidates again higher during the start of the, remember this is a 15-minute chart. So the first 2 or 3, 4 hours of Tokyo, it actually, consolidates higher, kind of puts in that high for the day, and then bam, it sells off. On this day, there was no really big rally during London. It tried to push up a little bit, but for the most part, that downtrend just continued. And again, London closes and things start to move sideways, and then Tokyo opens again the next day. Again, it rallies up, and then it just continues down. Okay, there's a little rally during the London session and at the start of the New York session, but this downtrend is clearly intact, and then it just continues right down. So again, you can put this on your chart, and you can just say, okay, I'm going to wait for, let's see how long this is on this consolidate. So Tokyo opens at 2 on my broker, and it was at 6, so about 4 hours in. So I'm just eyeballing it. Looks like 3 to 4 hours of Tokyo open for things to kind of get established. So for me, that would put me to 8 or 9 p.m. my time, because Tokyo opens at Tokyo actually opens at 7 p.m. my time. So 3 to 4 would put me between 10 p.m. and midnight my time for this to happen. Now I might not be up till midnight, but most nights I'm up till at least 10 or 11. And I'll just watch this and listen. If I feel this downtrend is going to continue, I might feel confident just taking the short anywhere in here and then just putting my stop loss up higher out of the way. Now this pair can really spike at market change. So if you, like for instance, wanted to take a short right here during Tokyo, I wouldn't put my stop right here, because it won't take much. One little spike up and you're out, only to see it go. So again, don't put your stop so close. I've talked about this many times. Don't put it where everybody else does. Instead of putting it here, put it up here, maybe this last swing high. It gives it plenty of breathing room. And if the trend is going to continue, then you'll be fine. Okay, and then once it starts to move, then you can drop your stop loss down to break even or whatever. So that's it. And then then you can decide, if you're a day trader at the end of the New York session, or excuse me, at the end of the London or the end of the New York session. Okay, you can decide: do I feel this trend is going to continue into the next day, or I feel confident holding this, or am I a day trader and I just want to get out at the end of the session? Well, these will help you, just eyeballing the price action over history. You can make that decision. Okay, and this is where changing that setting on the indicator, where it tells you how many back, how far back you can look. This is only 3 sessions. You might want to change this, so you can, if you really want to back test this over more than 3 sessions, go ahead and change that past sessions flag in the indicator, and back test it. I always encourage that you do that. All right. Let's see if we can look at another one here. Aussie Canadian. This is what I noticed, that it moves better during Tokyo, and then only into the early New York session. So let's just start from here. We have consolidation, and then on this particular day, it didn't really do much at all during Tokyo. Now again, we have the Australian dollar, so there is an Asian component, and we have a North American component. London Open, it shot up, okay? And then after this early New York session, nothing happened the rest of the day. Okay, and then Tokyo, it went up a little bit, consolidated back at the start of the London session, shot up at the beginning of the New York session. Well, let's just see where this is. This is 1600 hours. So yeah, this is pretty much the London close. Actually, no, this is not the London. So this is the early New York close. So what I find on this one, it moves basically from the start of the London session, but only into the early New York session and not really much further. Doesn't really go to the London close, which is right here. So, this is the Aussie Cats. And you say, well, if I'm going to trade this, I probably want to trade this during the early, either during London or the early New York session. Okay? And it doesn't really do much after that. It has a little spike. So, and honestly, this is not a pair I trade much, and now I kind of see why. Because it just doesn't fit very well into when I like to trade. So this is a pair I might just decide not to trade anymore, be honest with you. Just because of how it moves and the times it moves in. Okay? But we'll see. I'll keep an eye on it. Canadian Swiss. I find... now this is kind of sideways, so this is one where maybe it's not very accurate because you can see the price is moving very choppy. So actually I think I'm just going to skip that one because it's not really a good trend right here. There is a trend on the hourly chart, but even this right in here is okay, but the rest of this is really kind of sideways. So like I said, guys, just try to stick to markets that are trending. The pound versus the US dollar, again, what you'd expect if this moves during London and maybe New York, and that's it. So here's Tokyo, corrects down, London opens, spike up, a little liquidity run, then it shoots up, all right, and then basically runs up to the end of the London close, and then it goes back to sleep during New York, reopens at London, a little correction down, a little liquidity spike down, and then New York opens, and bam, it shoots up again. And then as soon as London closes, that's it. It might make a little bit more progress, but it's really just drifting the rest of the day. Then here's Tokyo again. Okay, Tokyo opens. Now look at this on the London Open on this day. This is where the banks are trying to take people out before they run it up. Now again, this is non-farm payroll, but still, this is during the London session. And we can see what happens here. We have this break at the start of the London session, and then it sells off. And anybody that put their stop right here was going to be taken out only to see this thing shoot up. Okay? So this is what I'm talking about with stop loss placement. Don't put, if you're going to say, well, I'm going to get in the beginning of the London session, don't put your stop right here, because you would have been taken out a very small loss right here, but you would have lost out on all this impulsive move up. So instead of putting your stop here, maybe put it down here or just somewhere lower. This is a 15-minute chart, so it's not a huge, number of pips. But, this is not a huge pip maker. But so I would say put your stop here. It gives you room in case you get a big spike out of this box and you don't get taken out on the way. And then once it moves in your direction, then just move your stop back up. Now, at that point, you can move your stop back up to, back into this area, and price is already gone. It's not coming back here. But then, you want to be cognizant that once London closes, that this pair is going to start selling off, and that's what happens. Okay? And that probably will continue once Tokyo reopens. Okay? So there's another one. There's a European American pair again, and very obvious, predictable that it's going to consolidate during Tokyo and then run up during London, New York, and then once London closes, things kind of quiet down for the day. So none of that might be a revelation, guys. But putting these on your chart can really just stands it out to you, so you can really see what's going on. And if you backtest this on trending pairs, you're going to find it's very, very, very predictable. I mean, not 100%. There's going to be some days where it's wacky and it doesn't line up. And that's probably because there was some news event or something that threw everything off. But when it's just normal trending and it's just in the middle of a trend that's just running, this is a great place to either manage to get back into a trade, or manage when you want to get out of it, or manage where you want to add to a position. Maybe you're already in and you want to know, okay, well, where's a good place to get in another position? You can find these consolidation areas, And those are the areas that you want to re-enter, not once the move is already made. If you want to get in right here, you want to get in here, not right here. Okay, because this did run back up, but all this time in here, you were not making anything, and you went into drawdown here, and it's not necessary. You just get in right here and bang, it's going to go back up. All right, so I went through all the pairs and just kind of made a note about when they generally move. And again, it's pretty predictable that if it has an Asian component in the pair, it's going to probably have some action during the Tokyo session. And if it doesn't, it's going to be more active during London and New York. If it's split, if there's one Asian component, one European or North American component, it's going to be kind of a mixed bag. If it's a pure Asian pair, like we looked at Aussie Yen, that's going to be one that's going to move primarily during Tokyo. And again, that might be good for some people that maybe, are not available during New York or London because you're either asleep or you're working or whatever. So you can help, fine tune this to what works for you in terms of time of day that you're able to trade. And if it's not full time, then you want to find the session that, works for you. And, that's going to depend on where you live and your lifestyle and your hours and all that you have available. Okay, so that's why this can help, and it can help weed out some pairs that maybe you shouldn't trade because they don't line up with your time frame, and stop trying to force trades on a pair that don't move during the time that you're looking at your charts. Okay, so I think I'm just going to leave it there. But this is pretty nice. I'm going to play around with this and experiment with it, and see what I can come up with for some consistency on some of these trades. And again, guys, you just got to be aware that eventually, obviously, these trends will end and things will roll over and go the other way. But for as long as they're trending, hey, then it's good. I'm going to look at it actually on this particular pair. So this is the the euro pound, and I'm going to actually, it looks like maybe we are changing trend direction here. And I'm actually going to be looking at potentially getting into this and, in the move down and see if I can, plan some entries on this. And this is obviously a pure European pair. So I'd imagine this is going to move mostly during London and consolidate during Tokyo. Okay, and I'm in the euro yen. I talked about this in my last video, and on the hourly chart we're starting to roll over. It looks like to the downside, so I'm in a short that I held through the weekend. And if I go to the 15-minute, I'm going to pretty much ignore this because this was an uptrend. Now that it's rolled over, I'm going to start to watch these boxes as they head down now and see if I can potentially add to this position if this is going to keep moving down. Okay, so so think about it, guys. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you need any, if you need the link where I downloaded this from, if you didn't catch it before, let me know. If you have any questions on installing it or adjusting it, let me know, and I'm glad to help out. So I hope you found it helpful, guys. Please smash that like button below the video, and if you're just finding the channel, click subscribe down in the lower right corner and ring that bell notification so you get notified when I post a vid, which is no more than generally 1 or 2 a week. So I don't post a lot, so you're not going to get bombarded. All right, and that's it, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll catch up soon.